When most people think about winning someone back, their instinct is to focus outward. They start asking, what should I say? What should I text? How do I convince her? But here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you make it about her, you've already lost ground. Because love, attraction, and desire are not created by convincing someone. They're triggered by perception, and the way she perceives you is a reflection of the way you perceive yourself. That's why the first and most important step is to stop focusing on her and instead turn that focus inward. Now, let me clarify, I'm not telling you to forget about her. I'm not saying she doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, if your entire identity right now is revolving around the fear of losing her, you've put yourself in a powerless position. Psychologically, desperation communicates lack, it tells her. I am incomplete without you. And the human mind doesn't respond to lack with attraction. It responds to strength. It responds to wholeness. Think about it. When has anyone ever been magnetized by someone who was needy, insecure, or endlessly available? They're not. We are drawn to people who stand tall in their own sense of self. People who radiate a quiet confidence that says, I'm good with or without you. That's where the shift begins. So the question becomes, how do you shift that focus? You start by understanding that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship in your life. If you treat yourself as if you are broken, she will subconsciously view you as broken. If you treat yourself as valuable, as someone who is on a mission, as someone who is evolving every day, she will begin to sense that even from a distance. And here's the fascinating thing about psychology. Perception changes reality. When she perceives you as rising, as leveling up, her emotional response changes automatically. You don't have to explain it, you don't have to announce it, she feels it, but this is not about putting on a show for her. That's where so many people fail. They think, okay, let me post on social media, let me show her I'm at the gym, let me pretend I'm happy. That's surface level. And people can smell pretense a mile away. This isn't about acting like you've changed, it's about actually changing. If your body is out of shape, build it. If your career is stagnant, push it forward. If your mindset is negative, discipline it. Not because she left, not because you want her validation, but because you refuse to live small. And paradoxically, that authenticity is what makes her drawn back. Philosophers have long said that human desire is mimetic. We want what appears valuable in the eyes of others. René Girard, a French thinker, spoke of this. People don't desire in a vacuum. They desire what others signal is worthy. Now, think about that in your situation. If you broadcast to the world, consciously or unconsciously, that you are low, no direction, no growth, then why would she desire you? But if you begin to live in a way that communicates value not artificially, but through genuine effort and achievement, she sees you differently. Not because you told her to, but because reality itself shifted. Let me make it practical. When you wake up tomorrow, instead of asking, how can I get her back? Ask, how can I respect myself more today? Because self-respect is magnetic. If you respect yourself, you don't beg. You don't chase. You don't allow poor habits to rule your life. You make decisions that reflect discipline. And discipline, gentlemen, is attractive. Whether it's in your health, your finances, your spiritual practice, or your intellectual pursuits, discipline signals strength. And strength is what creates safety, stability, and passion in a relationship. Now, some of you might be thinking, but isn't that selfish? Shouldn't love be about giving? Yes, love is about giving, but here's the paradox. If you have nothing inside you, what exactly are you giving? A broken version of yourself. That's not love, that's dependency. True love is only possible when two whole people come together and share their abundance. So by focusing on yourself, by becoming whole again, you are not only giving her a reason to be attracted back, you're also preparing yourself to offer something real and sustainable if she does return. And here's where it gets powerful. As you work on yourself, something fascinating begins to happen. Your attachment shifts. You may have started this journey desperate for her comeback. But as you grow, as you see yourself becoming sharper, stronger, more confident, you realize that you don't need her to validate you anymore. And ironically, that's when she feels the strongest pull back towards you, because she can sense the shift in your energy. The man who once begged for her presence is now a man she has to earn access to. That reversal of dynamic is not manipulation. It's the natural outcome of growth. Think of it like this: when you were at your best, when she first fell for you, you weren't sitting around wondering how to please her every second. You were living. You had a spark, a direction, an energy, and she was drawn to that. Over time, maybe you lost it. Maybe comfort turned into complacency. Maybe fear of losing her made you abandon the very qualities that attracted her in the first place. The solution is not to convince her with words. The solution is to reignite that fire within yourself. Because that's the man she fell for, and that's the man she will come back to. Don't misunderstand me. This doesn't guarantee she will return. Life doesn't work on guarantees, but what I can guarantee is this: if you don't focus on yourself, if you stay stuck in desperation, she almost certainly won't. On the other hand, if you rise, if you elevate, if you become undeniably magnetic, the probability of her coming back multiplies. And even if she doesn't, you will have evolved into a man who attracts someone better, someone more aligned, someone who values the person you've become. Either way, you win. So the first and most vital step is this: stop chasing her. Start chasing your potential. Every ounce of energy you were about to spend refreshing her social media, waiting for her text, or replaying the breakup in your head, redirect that into your own evolution. Because when you change, everything around you changes. And that brings me to the essence of this point. She doesn't come back because you convince her. She comes back because she feels, consciously or unconsciously, that the man she is looking at now is not the man she walked away from. He has grown, he has transformed, he commands respect, not by demanding it, but by embodying it. The shift begins the moment you stop asking, "What do I need to do to get her back?" And start asking, "What kind of man do I need to become so that losing me would be unimaginable?" That's the mindset. That's the path, and that's the key. When you begin working on yourself, as we just discussed, something remarkable happens. You shift the energy of the dynamic. But self-improvement alone isn't enough if you're still suffocating her with constant presence, constant calls, constant need for reassurance. The second pillar of this process is space, and I don't mean space as a gimmick or silence as a strategy. I mean genuine space, the kind that creates mystery, curiosity, and ultimately desire. Let's be honest here. One of the greatest illusions we fall into when someone pulls away is believing that more presence will fix the problem. She's slipping away, so you send more texts. She's not replying, so you call again. She seems cold, so you pour out more emotion. But notice what's happening. The more you give, the less she values it. The more you try to hold on, the more she resists. Why? Because psychologically, humans do not chase what is already available without effort. We chase what we might lose. We crave what we cannot immediately have. Think of the last time you wanted something badly. Maybe it was a new opportunity, a position, even an item. Part of the excitement came from the fact that it wasn't guaranteed. The uncertainty created tension, and that tension fueled your desire. This is the paradox of human attraction. Certainty is comfortable, but it rarely excites us. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, but it sparks curiosity. And curiosity is the seed of desire. This is why space is so powerful. When you stop flooding her with your energy, when you stop trying to constantly remind her of your presence, she begins to feel your absence. And that absence is not empty. That absence speaks louder than your words ever could. Silence is not nothingness. Silence is an invitation for her mind to wander, to question, to wonder. What is he doing? Who is he becoming? Why hasn't he reached out? And that wondering is what reopens the door. Now, many men hear this and treat it like a trick. They say, "All right, I won't text her for 3 days and then she'll miss me." That's not space, that's manipulation. True space isn't measured in hours or days. It's about your energy. It's about detachment. It's about no longer making her the center of your life. Because if your silence is still filled with anxiety, if you're sitting there obsessing, waiting for her to break first, she will feel that energy. And that energy is still desperate. Space works only when it's backed by genuine self-sufficiency. Philosophically, this idea connects deeply with the principle of detachment found in many traditions. The Stoics spoke of it, do not cling, because clinging breeds suffering. In Eastern philosophy, detachment is not indifference, but freedom, the ability to love without being enslaved by the outcome. When you create space with her, you are practicing this detachment. You're saying, "I care, but I am not collapsing my entire identity around you." That is what makes the space real. And here's where psychology comes in. When someone leaves, they expect a certain script from you. They expect the begging, the apologies, the frantic calls. And the more you follow that script, the more predictable you become. But when you step back, when you do the opposite of what she expects, you disrupt her narrative. Instead of confirming that she can always have you whenever she wants, you inject uncertainty. And uncertainty changes the entire emotional landscape. Suddenly, she's not sure where she stands with you anymore, and it is in that gap, in that knot, knowing that attraction can be reborn. Think about how relationships often fade. It's not always because love disappears. It's because familiarity dulls the spark. Predictability kills curiosity, but when you step back, when you let silence speak, you reintroduce unpredictability. And with unpredictability comes attention. She starts to look again. She starts to notice again. And the beautiful irony is, you didn't do anything directly to her. You simply stopped overdoing. I'll give you an analogy. Imagine you walk into a room filled with background music playing. At first, you notice it. After a while, it blends into the noise. You forget it's even there. But the moment the music stops, the silence feels striking. You notice the absence of sound more than you notice the presence of it. That's what your presence can become if you never allow space, background noise. But the moment you step back, the silence makes her aware of what's missing. That awareness is the seed of longing. And longing cannot exist without absence. This is a universal truth. You cannot miss what never leaves. You cannot crave what is always in front of you. You cannot desire what demands nothing of you. So by creating distance, you allow the natural psychology of longing to do its work. It's not about forcing her to miss you. It's about giving her the opportunity to miss you. But here's the challenge. Holding space requires strength. Because every part of you will want to break the silence. Every part of you will want to send that just checking in text. But if you give in to that impulse, you reset the entire process. Because space is fragile, it only works if you honor it. And honoring, it means trusting that the silence itself is more powerful than anything you could say right now. Now, does this mean you ignore her forever? No, space is not about punishment or withdrawal of love. It's about balance. It's about resisting the urge to smother. When she does reach out, you don't come back with bitterness or passive aggressiveness. You respond with calm, with ease, with lightness. The point of space is not to build a wall, but to reset the dynamic. To remind her and yourself that your worth does not depend on constant validation. At a deeper level, creating space is also about self-respect. Because when you respect yourself, you don't chase what isn't chasing you. You don't beg for attention that isn't being freely given. You hold your center, and in doing so, you force the other person to rise to meet you. That's why space works, not because of manipulation, but because it restores balance. And here's the beauty: while you are giving her space, you're simultaneously using that time to fuel your own growth. The 2 points are inseparable, because if you create space but do nothing with it, she feels nothing. But if you create space and use it to genuinely elevate yourself in your body, your mind, your mission, then the absence becomes even more powerful. Because when she does come back into contact with you, she doesn't just see the man she left, she sees the man you've become. So space is not about silence for the sake of silence. It's about silence that is alive, silence that is filled with transformation. Silence that speaks louder than words because it is backed by the weight of your evolution. And I'll leave you with this: space is not the distance between two people. It's the presence of possibility. When you stop filling every gap, every silence, every moment, you allow possibility to breathe. And it is in that breath, in that gap, that desire can grow again. By now, you understand the first 2 pillars. You've shifted the focus inward, and you've created the space that allows curiosity to bloom. But let's be clear, growth alone and space alone are not enough, because eventually she will reach out. Maybe it's a casual text, maybe a comment on something you posted, maybe she circles back more directly. That moment is crucial, because it's where most men sabotage themselves. They either swing to one extreme of being too cold and distant, trying to prove they don't care, or they collapse back into the old pattern of chasing, pleading, and over-explaining. Both destroy the progress you've built. The key is to rebuild the connection naturally. What does that mean? It means that when the door cracks open again, you don't barge through with heavy emotions. You don't dump all the things you've been holding in. You don't say, "Finally, you're back, I've been waiting for this." Instead, you remain calm, you remain light. You remain centered, because what draws her back is not pressure, but presence. It's not what you demand from her, it's what you embody in her presence. Let's think about this psychologically. When she reaches out, she's testing the waters. She's not handing you her heart on a silver platter. She's trying to see where you are. Has he changed? Is he still desperate? Is he still the man I walked away from? Every word, every tone, every response in that moment answers those questions for her. That's why your energy matters more than your script. It's not about finding the perfect thing to say. It's about showing, through your composure, that you're not the same man who once clung. So instead of being heavy, you stay light. Instead of being needy, you stay grounded. If she texts, you don't rush to reply in seconds. You don't write paragraphs. You respond as someone who has a full life, as someone who enjoys the interaction but doesn't need it for oxygen. That subtle difference is what communicates strength. Philosophically, this connects to the idea of effortless power. The Taoists call it wu-wei, action without force. The strongest influence is often the quietest. A river doesn't push aggressively, yet it carves valleys and shapes landscapes simply by flowing. In the same way, when she re-enters your world, you don't push, you allow, you flow. You let the connection rebuild itself organically, without needing to control or rush the outcome. Now, some of you might be tempted to use that moment as an opportunity to prove how much you've changed. You want to show her your new habits, your new insights, your transformation, but here's the paradox: the more you try to prove it, the less believable it becomes. Real change doesn't need a presentation, it doesn't need a speech. It reveals itself in how you carry yourself, how you communicate, how you no longer react the way you used to. She'll notice without you ever pointing it out, and when she notices on her own, it's 10 times more powerful than if you tried to convince her. The natural rebuilding of connection also means you don't rehash the past. Many men, when they get a second chance, drag the conversation straight into old wounds. Why did you leave me? How could you do that? But understand this, attraction doesn't grow in the soil of resentment. If you pull her back into guilt, into blame, into the heaviness of the breakup, you suffocate the new spark before it even catches fire. The past has already happened. What matters is the present energy you create together now. So instead of digging into old pain, you bring lightness. Humor, playfulness, positivity. That's what allows her to feel good in your presence again. And when she feels good around you, she wants more. There's also a deeper philosophical layer here. Friedrich Nietzsche once said that we must become who we are. That means living so fully and authentically that your presence itself becomes undeniable. When she comes back into your orbit, what she needs to sense is not a man pretending to be confident, but a man who actually is. A man who has, through struggle and growth, become more of himself, and when she feels that authenticity, it rekindles respect. Respect is the soil out of which attraction grows again. Now, rebuilding the connection doesn't mean moving too fast. Desire is a flame. It must be nurtured slowly. If you dump gasoline on it, it burns out. But if you feed it steadily with warmth, with playfulness, with intrigue, it grows stronger. So don't rush into, so are we back together? That question comes from insecurity. Instead, let the bond form naturally through repeated positive experiences. A light-hearted conversation, a fun meet-up, shared laughter, these moments matter far more than declarations. At the same time, you must hold your boundaries, because if she senses that you'll accept any treatment just to have her back, she loses respect again. Connection must be rebuilt on mutual recognition, not one-sided compromise. So while you remain open, warm, and engaging, you also remain firm in your self-respect. If she plays games, you don't collapse. If she tests, you don't overreact. You show by your actions that you are a man she can admire, not a man she can control. And remember, rebuilding connection is not about erasing the distance completely. You don't need to become available again. You keep some mystery alive. You allow her to lean in, to invest, to show her effort. That balance between openness and mystery keeps the dynamic alive. Too much openness too soon, and the spark fades. Too much mystery, and she gives up. Balance is the art. Ultimately, what you're doing here is creating a new emotional experience with her. The old pattern ended, that's why she left. If you repeat the same behaviors, the same energy, the same dynamics, she'll feel the same dissatisfaction. But if you bring a new energy, an energy of growth, self-respect, lightness, and calm, she'll associate you with a new feeling. And that feeling is what will keep her coming back. At the deepest level, attraction is not about words or tactics. It's about energy. It's about what she feels in your presence, and feelings cannot be faked long term. They must arise from who you have become. That's why all 3 points tie together. Growth builds the foundation, space ignites the curiosity, and rebuilding naturally sustains the spark. So when that moment comes, when she reaches out and the door opens again, remember, don't rush, don't pressure, don't perform. Simply be the man you've been working to become, be present, be light, be unshakable. And let her rediscover not the man who lost her, but the man she now realizes she doesn't want to lose again. And I'll leave you with this final truth. She doesn't come back because you convinced her. She comes back because being with you feels like coming home. Only this time, the home is stronger, brighter, and more alive than it was before.